morning.
Good morning.
On Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. we will start our new Bible study. It will be on the Torah, and we will also have an optional, a virtual component for those of you who would like to join remotely. But we will send out the information on that Bible study on how to connect virtually this week. We'll have an email with the contact information. But if you want to meet, we'll be meeting here in person. That'll be this Wednesday, June 9th at 5:30 p.m. What was that? I mean, no. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Buying to the rescue. Are there any additional announcements that we have? Yes, Mary's got some.
My sister wanted me to announce this morning that the Pocket City Post is doing their chicken fry, the Rooster Chicken Fry, this Saturday at True Value from 11:30 to 4:30. The cost is $10. If somebody wanted to get tickets, they can pay me. I'll put your name down, and she'll put it on her master list. Then we have the Father's Day Cookout coming up on the 20th. I am still looking for volunteers to help with that and do some brownies or cookies for me on that. So you can let me know on that. Our AED, you got our volunteers for that. I'm going to be sending the dates that I got to Patty, and they will pick out the date that will meet for that.
And those will be reflected in the newsletter also.
What?
Those announcements.
Yeah.
Oh, and council meeting is on Tuesday. What time?
3 o'clock.
We're still doing 3? Okay. Any other announcements? All right then. God be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. O God, from whom all good proceeds, grant that by your inspiration we may think the things that are right by your merciful guiding day. And by your inspiration, I'm riffing here. Let's start our prayer over. O God, from whom all good things proceed, Grant that by your inspiration we may think those things that are right, and by your merciful guiding do them. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. I invite you to rise as you are able and to join in our opening hymn, number 51. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, with my whole heart. Before the gods I will sing your praise.
I will bow down before your holy temple and praise your name because of your love and faithfulness.
You have glorified your name, and your word is above all things.
When all things answered me, you increased my strength within me.
All the kings of the earth will praise you, O Lord, when they have heard the words of your mouth.
They will sing the ways of the Lord, and great is the glory of the Lord.
The Lord is high, he cares for the lowly, he perceives the haughty from afar.
Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you keep me safe. You stretch forth your hand against the fury of my enemies. Your right hand shall save me.
The Lord will make good his purpose for me.
O Lord, your love endures forever. Do not abandon the works of your hands.
Now 20 and 11, 14 to 15. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not follow in your ways. Appoint for us then a king to govern us like other nations." But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to govern us." Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them, just as they have done to me from the day I brought them up out of Egypt to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So also they are doing to you. Now then, listen to their voice only. You shall solemnly warn them and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them." So Samuel reported all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, "These will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots and to be his horsemen and to run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of fifties, and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make his implements of war and the equipment of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his courtiers. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers and his courtiers. He will take your male and female slaves and the best of your cattle and donkeys and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. But the Lord will not answer you in that day." But the people refused to listen to the voice of Samuel. They said, "No, but we are determined to have a king over us, so that we may also be like other nations, and that our king may govern us and go out before us and fight our battles." Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal, and there renew the kingship." So all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal. There they sacrificed offerings and of well-being before the Lord, and there Saul and all the Israelites rejoiced greatly. This comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 13 to 5:1. "But just as we have the same spirit of faith that is in accordance with Scripture, I believed, and so I spoke. We also believe, and so we speak, because we know that the one who raised the Lord Jesus will raise us also with Jesus, and will bring us with you into his presence. Yes, everything is for your sake, so that grace, as it extends to more and more people, may increase thanksgiving to the glory of God. So we do not lose heart, even though our outer nature is wasting away, our inner nature is being renewed day by day. For this slight momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all measure, because we look not at what can be seen, but at what cannot be seen. For what can be seen is temporary, but what cannot be seen is eternal. For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens.
I invite you to rise for the gospel. The gospel this morning comes to us from Mark chapter 3, verses 20 through 35. "And the crowd came together again so that they could not even eat. When his family heard it, they went out to restrain him, for saying, 'He has gone out of his mind.' Then the scribes who came down from Jerusalem said, 'He is Beelzebub. By the ruler of the demons he casts out demons.' And he called to them and said, 'Who spoke to them in parables? How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, it cannot stand. And if the house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. And if Satan has risen up against himself and is divided, he cannot stand, but his end has come. But no one can enter a strong man's house and plunder his property, unless the first man has been tied up. Then indeed his house can be plundered. Truly I tell you, people will be forgiven for their sins and whatever blasphemies they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit can never have forgiveness, but is guilty of an eternal sin. For they had said, he has an unclean spirit. Then his mother and his brothers came, standing outside, they said, and called to him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they said, your mother and your brothers and sisters are outside, and they are asking for you. And looking at those who sat around him, he says, who are my mother and my brothers? These who are sitting around me are my mothers and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and my sister and my mother. May the Lord bless the reading and hearing of the Holy Word. Let us pray. God of grace and God of glory, we thank you for this day that you have given to us, an opportunity in which we can just present ourselves. Let your word fall afresh upon us. Perhaps season us for the week that lies ahead. And all things for the journey that has led us to this time and place, for the deliverance that you have made real, and for the constant undercurrent of wisdom that has been poured into our hearts and minds through various sources that you have provided. We thank you. You have kept us on a course and have allowed us to give you thanks and praise. May that continue and endure. May we always be mindful of the lessons that you wish to teach us now and always. Let the words of my mouth and meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you. Bless, keep, and guide us. In Jesus' name. Amen. Last week, quite unknowingly, maybe the things are never really unknowingly, I had made reference to this passage from 1 Samuel chapter 8. We were looking at the prophet Isaiah, who realized that he was speaking to an individual group of a community that was now in crisis because the king had died, and that king had become sort of a focal point for the people in that time in that region. And I had made reference to the time when Israel first wanted a king, and how their appointed leader at the time, Samuel, took exception to that. So since I hinted at that passage, and now we have this passage before us, let's roll back in time and take a look at why Samuel took exception at this need for Israel to want to be modernized, to want to be like other nations, and how he was having a difficult time wrapping himself around what God was going to do with that, because we know where Samuel was at. Samuel was part of what they call the Judges. There's a book of Judges. And this period of Judges, starting with Joshua and going up to Samuel, a number of individuals in between, were religious leaders, prophetic leaders who were designed to be spiritual heads and prophet guides to the people of Israel as they moved out of bondage in Egypt and into this land that God said would be provided to them, the land flowing with milk and honey, this land of Canaan. And they needed to have at least an individual who would speak on behalf of God, sort of remind them of the covenant and of the promise. Earlier this year, we went through a number of different texts speaking about the covenant. And so God sent these religious individuals to keep the people connected. But they weren't a king. They didn't have any sort of political power, but they had spiritual influence. An entrusted advisor to keep people on course. But we are now to the point where what's happening to Samuel is what happened to the individual who raised him. When Samuel was a boy, his mother, who had prayed that she could have a child, went to the temple to pray. And the priest who was there, Eli, saw Samuel's mother praying. Her lips were moving, but he couldn't hear what she was saying because the words that she was saying were meant for God and could only be heard by God. And he thought she was making a drunken spectacle out of herself. So he's like, get out of my temple. I'm not going to have you tie one on and make a spectacle in my church. Get out of here. And she's like, no, you don't understand. I'm a woman who's deeply grieved. I have longed for a child, and God has not given me one. And Eli, once he's been corrected and once he understands what the woman's prayer was, he says, oh, go home. God has heard your prayer. And sure enough, God did hear her prayer, and she was able to conceive and have a child. And as a result of her gratitude for receiving this child, she decided she wanted the child raised in the temple. So she went back to Eli, who was the priest of the temple, and she gave her young son, Samuel, to be raised in the work of God. Now, the call of Samuel was an interesting one because it was one evening. Samuel was about 10 or 12, and it was bedtime. Eli went to his chambers. Samuel went to his chambers. Samuel went down, and just before he was drifting off to sleep, there was a voice that was calling to him. It says, Samuel, Samuel. And it says in that time, the word of the Lord was scarce. So Samuel got up and he went to Eli because he would assume that it was Eli who was calling him because there's nobody else here. This happened 3 times. And Samuel would hear the voice say, Samuel, get up. And he would go to Eli, and Eli's like, I'm not calling you, go back to sleep. On the 3rd time, when Samuel comes to him and says, I am here, Father, you've called me. Eli, he knows what's going on. He said, no, it's God calling you. Here's what you need to do. Go back, lie down. When the voice comes again, say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So Samuel goes back. And it's going to play out in a comedy skit. The kid running back and forth. You called me. No, I didn't call you. I don't know. But I heard a voice. It was you. No, it wasn't me. Go back to sleep. I want to get to sleep. And you can almost see this kind of back and forth. So Samuel goes back this time, a 4th time. Goes back, tries to get some sleep. The voice comes again to him. Now he's got the correct response. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And then all of a sudden, God proceeds to download all of this really heavy news on Samuel. That my love has been pulled away from Eli and his family because his sons are corrupt, and I'm not going to continue to allow his household to guide my people, Israel. It's going to be on you. It's on you now, Samuel. I have now taken my vestige, I've now taken my confidence, and I have placed it on you. So Samuel, as a young boy, has to go and tell the only father figure that he's ever known that you're out. God says, there's something that's going on in your family that God doesn't approve of, and you're done. So next day, when Samuel goes before Eli at breakfast time, it's a very awkward breakfast. Maybe we've had awkward breakfasts too. Because maybe God said something to us and we've got to go tell our parents about it. If it's happened, I want to hear stories after church. So Eli's like, what did the Lord tell you? What did he tell you? And of course Samuel doesn't want to come clean. He's like, no. Because if you withhold anything that God said to you, may the punishment be 10 times worse on you than it is on me. He's like, well, since you put it that way, okay, I'll come clean. God says you've messed up. Your sons are bad, they're wicked, they don't follow in your ways. They're not like you. And so as a result of it, God has removed his love and favor from your household, and he's placed it on me. There. Message delivered. Eli thinks on it for a while, and he says, well, let it be according to God's word. Fast forward. We go from the boy Samuel to the much elderly Samuel. Today's passage. All the elders of Israel gather around. And they go to Samuel, and they say the same thing to Samuel that Samuel had to say to Eli. You're old, and your sons don't follow in your ways. They're bad kids. So here's the thing, Samuel. No offense, but you're out. We don't want you anymore. We want a king. Other nations have kings, and we want a king. We want a king to rule over us. We want a king to lavish upon us. We want a king to march before us and fight our battles for us. We want a king. We want to modernize. We don't want this judge's stuff anymore. So out with your household and in with the new. And Sam, this has to be like sort of like a time warp for Samuel. He's like, I have been here before. I know this script. But this time he's on the receiving end. He's not the one who's giving the message. He's the one who's receiving it. so he goes to God in his misery and in his hurt, and he prays to God, but he is praying out of the burden of being cast aside, out of the burden of realizing that, first of all, his age is an impediment, and his kids have been considered unworthy. Like whatever example they haven't followed in their father's footsteps, they haven't observed the ways of the covenant, they have presented a bad example. So Samuel is now sandwiched in aging out of his position and then having heirs who were unworthy according to the people that he has been guiding these many years. So he goes and he prays to God, and he's like, look, the people want to get rid of me. They want to get rid of me. They want a king. And God's trying to console Samuel. He's like, Samuel, it's not about you. It really isn't. They haven't rejected you. They've rejected me for being king over them. But Samuel doesn't even acknowledge that. Samuel's still brooding on his own hurt and his own misery. Samuel's like, what's wrong with me? I've always been there for them every last time. I tell you, anyone who's ever been in the service of the church in any capacity, lay or clergy, can relate with Samuel. No good deed goes unpunished. So Samuel, with his bruised ego, is trying to pray to God and says, can't you fix this for me? Can't you change their hearts and minds? Can't you do something? I don't want to go out like this. And God's like, okay. Tell them what a king is going to require of them. Give them this laundry list of all these things that a king is going to insist upon in order to lavish the kingdom. They want a king, there's some expenses that are involved with furnishing a king. So Samuel's excited about that. And he comes back with this laundry list that Bill read. That a king is going to take 1/10 of your courtiers, and he's going to take the best of your vines and your vineyards and the best of your livestock. And he's going to take your girls and make them maidservants. He's going to take your sons and make them soldiers and manservants. He's going to take the best of your lumber in order to fancy palatial spaces. And he's going to take all of your resources, and you're going to be taxed heavily and all these things. And then Samuel tacks on a little dig at the end of it. And on the day when you have been played out, and on the day when every last one of your resources has been commandeered and requisitioned, you're going to cry out to God for mercy. And on that day, God will not hear you. That's Samuel talking, because we don't hear that from God. That's Samuel's last little, and take that! How dare you get rid of me and tell me my kids are bad. No parent wants to hear that their kids are bad, even if their kids are bad. They want to hear that. Samuel's like, don't you get talking about boys like that. So he's like, on that day, when the Lord comes heavy on you with this king, you're going to cry out and God's not going to hear you. And what's the response of the people of Israel? They're completely nonplussed. They're not even phased. It's like, no! We want a king to be over so we can be like other nations. Okay? Alright. You want a king? Let's go down to Gilgal. I'll get you a king. I'm going to get you a king. I'll get you a guy who looks the part. And the first king that was anointed over Israel was Saul. And, well, let's just put it this way. Saul was all about Saul. So that made it a very difficult patch. But in this passage, we have to set ourselves down in the context of Samuel. Samuel was in the service of God. He's been in the service of God his entire life, from the time that he was a boy up until his sort of years, his twilight years. He has been in the service of God, and he's always tried to convey the message of God to the people without too much editorialization until it became personal. And in this passage, we realize that Samuel is not speaking as clearly and as crisply as he has in the past, because now it's become personal. Now he realizes that his time, his era has come to an end, and he's not ready for it to end. That there's some changes that the people are requesting, and he's not comfortable with those changes, especially if they require that he not be part of those changes. We have to think about ourselves as people of faith who are charged with trying to be witnesses to the God that we profess. There are times in our world where our faith is tested because we see situations and circumstances that are arising that we either do not understand or just outright reject. and the individuals who are involved in these episodes and these scenarios, they are points of contention for us. Samuel is still charged to love the people even though they want to transition their political rule and their influence. Samuel is still charged to be, at least until the transfer of power, Samuel is still charged to love them as consistently as he has in the past. But Samuel, like so many other humans, has a hard time wondering where his ego ends and the will of God begins. So Samuel wants to hurt the individuals that he's been charged to love because they hurt him. This is an old story. This is an old story. Someone comes at us with a recrimination. Someone comes at us and says something with a criticism. We say, I got some stuff on you too. Keep it up. You'll see. And then we don't stop at that. We hit the online. It's like, I'm going to hurt them before the populace. I'm going to press send. You'll see. You should have never said what you said. You really shouldn't have, because I'm going to say a lot more. And so Samuel, instead of being able to recognize that, first of all, it really isn't a rejection of him. Never once did the people say to Samuel, you've been a bad leader. They said, you're old now. You need a break. You need to sort of ease on it. We want you. We finally need you to take retirement. But your sons have not followed in your ways. See, that was lost on him. This is not a condemnation of Samuel's leadership. It's just that for all that you have taught us, somehow it was lost on your kids. We don't know if it was a generational gap, but your sons just, they don't honor your legacy, Samuel. We want you to finish well. So set a king over us. You work with the king. Because actually Samuel did work with the king. He worked with Saul as best he could. He worked with the king that followed him, David. But Samuel could only think about his immediate needs. What's going to happen to me? Now, how many of us have been in that circumstance where we think that things that are happening in our communities, things that are happening in our world, are only happening to us and not happening to our neighbors, not happening to anybody else? And any deviation from what is supposed to be our due and our comfort, well, off with them. Look, there are going to be changes that are going to take place that are going to test our faith. That are going to challenge our faith. There's going to be new ideas that are going to emerge in the church. There'll be new individuals with different types of ideas on what faith is and how it should look like. And that might very well cause us discomfort. Might even cause us a level of discomfort where we don't know if we want to be part of this fellowship anymore. If we can continue on with the church. Now, Jesus said to his disciples, and I think this has been consistent throughout all of the prophets, that we have been charged with the ability to both bless or curse. That we have the ability to either forgive the sins of others, or we can retain them. We have the ability to allow our blessing and our affirmation and our affirmations to just sort of envelop those that we meet along the way, build them up in encouragement, or we could walk through life with only condemnation on our mind. We have to realize, when is it our bruised ego speaking, and when is the will of God that's working through us? Now, this passage does end with Samuel and the leadership of the people of Israel going down to Gilgal, anointing Saul. They sacrificed to God, and it says they all rejoiced greatly. Which means Samuel got over his point. He got over his bruised ego. He got over his hurt. He realized that he was being ushered into a new role as advisor and guide and mentor to this new king. So he could still have influence. And that his family wouldn't become a legacy family. His family wouldn't become something like the new ruling authority. But he could be a guide to influence and shape this new kingdom. his influence wouldn't be lost. It just had to be realized. He had to remember that he was serving the greater will of God and not the individual ego of Samuel. So when we head out into the expanse of the world, we go as individuals. But because we profess our faith in Christ, we also go as people of faith. And sometimes we find that there's not a clean dovetail between our own personal opinions and the faith we hold. God is challenging us to narrow that gap. God is asking us to allow the influence of the divine word to have a little bit more preeminence in our conduct in the public sphere, so that way we do not look upon individuals as allies or enemies, but we look as individuals upon individuals who can be blessed and enhanced by this word that has blessed and enhanced us. As Samuel wrestled with God, feeling as if somehow it was all a personal affront to him, and God tried to calm Samuel and saying, really, it is a rejection of me. I have been with them since I heard their cry in Egypt. I have been with them in this covenant. We have been through many journeys together. They've had a tough time during the Exodus, and I never removed my love from them, and I'm not going to remove my love from them now. If they want a king, they can have a king. And I will do my best to make sure that that particular king still reflects my will and purpose. But what I need from you, Samuel, the input and the participation that I need from you is to keep your cool, to understand what I have taught you, to understand the dignity and the role that you have played, and to continue to play that part consistently. Don't shrivel away, don't shrink away on me now. I need you. You're going to be the one to anoint this king. You're not going to fade away. You're not moving into the background. You will be preeminent in this. You will still have influence. You will still have my access to me. You will still be able to guide and shape this kingdom. But you have to let me work here. And I think that God is always speaking to us at various times when we feel our back is against the wall and we're so upset with the way things are in the world. And don't want to talk to anybody because it's all foolish. You know, when we get all pouty and weird. God is saying, hang on, friend. I need you to think about things. I need you to work with me on this one. I need you to remember that I have baptized you and saved you, mostly from yourself. I need you to not give up on me now. I need you to listen more and talk less. I need you to be observant and stay tuned. Because that is our work. Right now, there's an individual or a series of individuals who will either be drawn to God or rejected from God on the basis of what they see in us. Sorry, that's just the burden we carry as people of faith. And I can tell you, more people have been driven out of the church than into the church on the basis of what we do. So we're very good at actually conveying an influence. It's just the wrong influence. The influence that we're conveying is that we're all jerks, don't associate us. In fact, avoid us at your peril. Because you get involved with Christians, and I guarantee you're going to start watching the standard and the quality of your life just chip away. That's not what we want as our public image, but somehow we've been very good at sort of being purveyors of the worst of us. The weaponization of the gospel. The polarity, pulling one direction or the other direction. Saying what God approves of and what God doesn't approve of. We could all be tempted, just like Samuel, to want to go back and lash out at those who we think have tried to hurt us or our family. We could go and put little digs on there and say, okay, fine. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go. I'll resign the position. That's okay. But I hope you never get another decent minister. I hope your next council president's an absolute jerk, spends up all your money. And I hope your fans stop working. You know? They're like trying to cut the power cord. I mean, people can just get to this point where it's like, if you don't get to have me, then no more fun for you. Ever again. And if that is the gospel that we're selling, then I hope nobody ever joins us. If the only thing that we can convey is how miserable God has made us, if the only thing that we can convey is the fact that we, people of faith, are unhappy with the rest of the world as God has created it. And if, but it would just go away. I hope you know I'm being facetious, and these are not my thoughts. But how easy it is to get there. And how easy it is for others to keep us there in that point of distress, that point of discontentment, that point of, you know what I don't like? They go, oh yes, tell me what you don't like. And then my turn. What did Samuel think he was going to do? He think he was going to scare them with this list? The king's going to want this, and the king's going to want that. And the king's going to take the fairest of your daughters, and the king's going to take the strongest of your sons, and the king's going to do all this stuff for you. And they're like, are you trying to scare us, Samuel? Our decision is fine. We want a king. Now, will you help us, or do we have to go and find a king ourselves? Because you can be with us, Samuel, and enter into this new thing, or later for you and your sons. And God's like, Samuel, how about you stay connected? Because then your good influence, your groundedness, your wise counsel will still be part of this new thing. So we need to keep our heads, friends. We need to keep our heads. I know all of our buttons are being pushed politically in this day and age. And any last thing that you can have can be politicized, right? I mean, I could even say, those of you, a lot of people sat on the lectern side of the church. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. I don't want it to mean anything, except people just sat on that side of the church. You know, I mean, what does that say about those on this side? They sat further away from me. What does that mean? I mean, really, come on. Are we to this point where we absolutely have to kind of monitor every last thing and monitor how a person greeted us? They said hello, but they didn't smile. They smiled, but they looked away. What's that mean? Stop reading into it. Stop trying to parcel it into something deeper than it is. We have only so much time on this earth, and I think it would be to our benefit to spend less of it in misery, a little bit more of it in joy, spend less of it trying to double down on our truths and opinions, and a little bit more in hearing what's going on in someone else's world. A little bit less trying to stick it to somebody else and owning somebody else, and marveling at the vastness of the diversity that we are surrounded by, and go, wow, what can I learn from all this? And just to be open to learning anything at all. Because I still believe that the church is one of the, hopefully not the last place, but one of the few places where we can come with such great diversity and still come away with a message. And still come away with a sense of the value of everybody who's in this place. Everyone who's joined us virtually. And to realize that there's no stored up conflict with us and the people that we will interact with the rest of the week. They're just opportunities for us to reach a new depth of ourselves, have an exchange of ideas, maybe create a world better than it currently is, and be part of something. So, Samuels and Samuelettes, don't pull yourself out of the picture. Don't get upset because somebody's like, well, we want something new, we want some change, we want something different. Don't see that as a threat to your ecosystem, to your value system. Say, well, can I play? I said, yeah, you can play. Come on in. Come on. Let us join together in our responsive hymn. It is number 477. Loving most merciful God, giving you thanks for this day, for these moments, the opportunity to sort of untether our minds from the constant gnawing responsibilities that are tied to us by choices we've made, decisions, life we've chosen to live. Sometimes even the weight of our own responsibilities can become so burdensome that we want just the tiniest escape from these things that constantly require our attention. And then we intersect with your gospel and we realize that, again, you have things that you would like us to attend to as well. Because of the reality and the pressing nature of the immediacy of our lives, we don't always get around to tending to your will, putting it into effect, forgetting that it is your will that sets the standard and the pulse for our daily life. Forgive us for those times when we were too busy for devotions, to read our scriptures, to either attend worship or even to catch an online service. Those times when we're like, God understands, I'm going to get there. Forgive us for those times when we have become so polarized on the particular issues of our day that we stop seeing one another as part of the great creation, stop seeing one another as children of God, started to feel as if we truly actually had individuals out there that we count as enemies. Forgive us for being so carried away and so passionate that we forgot to see the partnership that you call us into every day. You call us into a partnership with others that we might work in concert to fashion the kind of communities we indeed truly want to live in. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to see from one of your great holy men that even he got a bruised ego, that even he had to sort of work through his own hurt and pain and to learn to love again. I mean, when we see that Samuel lost his cool, we find ourselves in very good company. That even for all of his vastness and depth of wisdom and enduring patience, that he too had his moments. He too had things that he didn't want heard or said about him or his family. He too went to you and cried out and says, make it right, please, just make it right. We can relate with that. So we thank you for giving us such a tactile narrative. Sometimes we could just scratch the name of Samuel out, put our own name in it, and go from there. But how do you want us to move forward? I mean, what do you want us to observe? What should we cool down on? And what should we incline our ear towards more? Just give us some guidance. Give us some points of reference. Help us not to live such stressful lives. We want to live long. We don't want to stress ourselves out of existence. So give us some talking points. Give us some listening points, maybe better to the point. But help us to attach ourselves to that which restores our calm and allows us to be a calming presence. The last thing we want to do is to enter into our workplaces, enter into our household, and bring tension to already tense spaces. We want to be able to arrive and bring a sort of unspeakable calm. As we often like to say, that peace that passes all understanding. But only you can make that possible. Work with us. We ask your blessing on those who are sick and suffering, those in body, mind, and in spirit, and laid low. For those currently in hospital receiving treatment, those at home recovering from procedures, strengthening their bodies and minds. For those in the rather precarious position of being terminally ill, grant them peace. Grant their families peace. And surround them with the assurance that your word endures. Be with those who travel a safe journey to everyone who moves about, especially as more people are starting to move about. I ask that you bless individuals as they head to this and that destination, sometimes for recreation, sometimes for work, etc. For the students who have been graduated and looking forward to their summer plans, we ask that you keep them safe. Reward their accomplishment with a sense of wisdom so they can enjoy the summer as safely as possible before getting on to their continued business. Let that be a prayer for all of us who are entering into these hot days. Lord, your people are gathered here just as you have created them. They have prayers and concerns of their own, joys and thanksgivings, regrets, sorrows. Receive their prayers for the sake of he who offered himself for us. In Jesus' name. Giving you thanks, Lord, for receiving these, the prayers of your people. Said unto you, collect them into your care. Be gracious as you respond to each and every one of our inquiries. And help us to strengthen our witness and to be consistent in our desire to serve others as you have served us. Remember us in your kingdom as we pray as one. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. God blesses us and enriches us, gives us gifts, both seen, yet to be realized. We respond with the giving of our own gifts. Thank you, Lord. mind and our bodies to usefulness in the world, to be able to show a reward for our time and effort. Receive this which we offer to the service of your church, to the ministry. We ask that you would bless each and every one of us and our gifts, that we might continue to serve you in our own capacity as you give us the ability. Receive these gifts in Jesus' name. I invite you to join together in the front cover of our hymnal as we join together in the church covenant. We'll read in unison. We covenant with the Lord and with one another, and we bind ourselves in the presence of God to walk together in his four ways. We will strive to be doers of the word and not hearers only, to be firm in faith, quickened in hope, and constant in charity. And we will consecrate our time, talent, substance, and influence as heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. Let us pray. God, as you have given us the opportunity to gather in this space and to release ourselves from, shall we say, momentarily, the burdens of the world, I invite you into allowing us to realize that you have absolved us. And through that absolution, we have been renewed. So receive us as we present ourselves once again for your instruction and your guidance. May this bread, this cup, renew us and remind us that we are forgiven, loved, and blessed in Jesus' name. Amen. On the night in which Jesus was betrayed, he celebrated the Passover meal. He took bread, blessed it, gave it to his disciples, saying, "This is mine, which has been given for you. Take it and eat." In like manner, they celebrated with the cup. He says, "This is the cup of the new covenant, my blood shed for the remission of sins." Let us take the cup of salvation. As often as we do eat of this bread and drink from this cup, we do proclaim the Lord's death until he comes again. A prayer of thanksgiving. Well, with the assurance that you have made possible, the warmth of your blessing, the response to the hearing of the word, the singing of the hymns, the receiving of this sacrament, we ask God that you prepare us and ready us for whatever the week has in store. May we, once again, try to attune our senses to the way in which you would respond to the world. Help us to lower our tempers and to increase our compassion. We thank you for forgiving us and allowing us once again to stand in your path. In Jesus' name, amen. We join together in our closing hymn, number 500. And now may the grace of Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be upon you now and always. May it keep you and guide you in peace.